Hello, today's session is on post-retirement counseling. So, what are the problems which one is concerned with as one approaches retirement? Well, majority of the elderly consider their incomes to be sufficient if they have done thorough planning to meet their requirements at retirement. However, there is always a concern at the back of their mind: if they were to fall ill seriously, then the financial resources may not be adequate. They fear losing control of the financial position because of not being able to administer or obtain good advice, etc. So, an understanding of the psychological aspects of retirement is important for a counselor. Obviously, the first approach, or the basic approach to help in this aspect, is to monitor the investment yield. Obviously, if it is not meeting the range for which it was set up, the investment was set up, then further planning, further different strategy needs to be considered. It's not just the investment environment which is critical, it's also the circumstances of the individual that matters. For example, health of the individual, as mentioned earlier, an unexpected death, for example the death of the spouse, all these can have severe disruptions in the desired objectives and how they are to be achieved. The other aspects of retirement, which are, if you like, the non-economic dimensions and require understanding, is that many retired people decide to pursue interests such as yoga, health, etc., healing rather, and so on, and some actually indulge themselves in social work. So, while some other clients may decide to take up hobbies which they didn't have the opportunity to do before, while others may decide to take up vacations which they were not able to, long vacations which they were never able to do but always thought of doing. So all these different aspects which come into play after retirement have also got to be considered, and the client advised on how appropriate they might be, and how useful also they might be in terms of having a healthy retirement. So it's not just the wealthy aspect but the healthy aspect that the counsellor has to consider as well. So what are the risks and constraints that one needs to consider as one gets close to retirement, or actually is in process of retirement? One of them we all know is inflation, and basically an inflation is a powerful element which reduces the purchasing power of money. And when one starts planning for retirement, normally and ideally it should be long term, and a very small, in fact a very small change in inflation can, because it's a long term we're looking at, can have a severe effect on the purchasing power of the money when one gets to retirement. For example, if the growth rate or the return is 10%, and the inflation is as high as 6%, then one can expect a net growth of less than 4%. So even though one was banking on the 10% growth. The other aspect which has an effect on the investment returns, etc., is of course the interest rate. Now there are pluses and minuses. A fall in interest rate, for example, does have an impact on the values or of instruments of predetermined interest rate and fixed rate, and with fixed rate maturity dates, while an immediate annuity which has already been purchased is not affected by any change in the interest rate. So for example, if when the annuity was purchased the interest rates were high and the return was as high as 9%, and underlying return was 9%, then even if the interest rate goes down, then amount which is being paid to the annuitant is not affected. If there is a substantial rise in interest rate, the price of real estate falls, because most real estate owners have mortgages and loans, etc., and of course they have to pay the interest on the return. Similarly, if interest rates decline sharply, then one finds that real estate prices as well as stock prices tend to rise because they become more accessible, if you like. If if one finds that interest rates are falling, then the planner may advise the client who is actually on the verge of retirement to invest in life annuity contracts or long-term fixed deposits. Changes in financial markets, particularly affected by political or social changes, have also need to be taken into consideration when counseling for retirement. As we've already mentioned, interest rates, inflation, real estate prices and stock prices are more or less interlinked and do affect each other. So what are the processes for hedging one's bets, if you like? How to reduce the impact on one's investment, on one's retirement future? Well, they include reducing of risk through diversification. In other words, have different classes of assets, and therefore so as to reduce the total risk on the portfolio. Another way is to rebalance the portfolio. For example, before retirement, one may have invested in more aggressive forms of investment, but as one gets closer to retirement, that is put into safer investment classes. The process of restructuring one's portfolio should start 5 to 10 years before the actual date of retirement, so as to reduce the impact of any sudden changes. So what one would do would be to gradually move from, say, equity to debt to say 5 years before retirement. Restructuring the investment should also be considered so as to ensure regular income to the retiree. In other words, whereas previously perhaps one had invested in an instrument which accumulated the return, now one should look for a vehicle which liquidates that particular investment, producing regular income. The risk tolerance of the client is something that the planner has to take into account. As one gets closer to retirement, of course, the normal approach is to reduce the risk one is taking. If the client still wants to invest in equities, he can do so he must, of course, as mentioned earlier, diversify, or he can put investments in areas which are considered to be more stable, pharmaceuticals, banking, etc. Therefore, he's still got if you like, a foot in the equity market, but in more stable areas. The client's health during retirement has a very important effect on his finances. If he falls seriously ill, or a family member falls seriously ill, then of course that can create a severe dent in his wealth, in his accumulated wealth, which he had planned to use for retirement purposes. Therefore, he must consider, if he has already not done so, health insurance, taking up critical illness insurance, and so on. Don't forget, it's not just the client's health which has an effect on his plan, but also his obviously his immediate relatives, a spouse, etc. Their health may also have an effect on the plan. Recently, there has been a new scheme which has come on the market called reverse mortgage scheme, which can provide with senior citizens with another source of income. Now, what happens is the senior citizen who is the owner of a house can mortgage the house, and in return is provided with the bank, and in return the bank provides a regular income. There is no need to repay the mortgage. What happens is, on the death of the client, the bank or financial institution sells the property and takes the outstanding loan from that sale price. Another consideration which the person getting close to retirement or already in retirement may consider, apart from the others, the investment structure, etc., is if he is likely to fall ill or has fallen ill, to consider gifting, thereby putting the assets in the hands of his legal representatives or his family, who may be able to administer the assets better and maintain the standard of investment return which he has become used to. There are of course tax advantages. Section 80G of the Income Tax Act gives exemptions on gifts up to certain levels and so on. So in conclusion then, it is important to obtain some counselling at retirement, or just for a client who is actually just about to retire, and the planner who acts as a counsellor should take into account the client's financial resources as well as his plans in retirement as to his hobbies and other pursuits that he intends to use his extra time on. It goes without saying that the periodical monitoring of the investments which have been made must continue and is important to be viewed carefully. The planner must also take into account the client's health during post-retirement period, because that can have a serious effect on the wealth which has been accumulated. And I'll stop there for today. Thank you.